I want to show you how I make this big, beautiful bow that's so popular on cakes right now. To start, I do have Tylose powder mixed into my fondant. I only use marshmallow fondant. The Tylose powder is going to help it set a little harder and hold its shape. So you do need this in your fondant. So I want to start by making the tail. So I rolled that fondant out and I'm just trimming it to like a long rectangle and cutting it in half. And I wanted to thin it out a little bit more. You could see how thin I made it. And then I just want to trim it straight on the top and on an angle on the bottom. And then I'm flipping it over and I want to tuck in the edges a little bit. This is going to give a cleaner look. So I'm just pulling the edges in. I just feel like it looks a little bit more finished when you do this. So I'm getting a little bit of water behind those edges and then I'm pushing the edges down. And again, like I said, it's just going to make your pieces look a little more finished and pretty. So now I have two skewers. I'm putting one piece on top. And do you see how I'm pinching the skewer to kind of create a little fold in here? And then I'm using my fingers to really fold that in half. I find it easier to start with the skewers first. Now I got my cake out of the refrigerator and I'm holding them up. They're a little long, so I need to take my scissors and trim them, and they look pretty good. So I want to get a little bit of icing. It's buttercream icing. That's the same color that I iced it with. That's American buttercream. I'm just getting a little bit behind that tail and I'm really pressing it down, trying to wave it into like a little shape there. I'm going to do the same thing on the other side. Get a little bit of icing down. I like to use icing. I feel like it has a really strong hold because I refrigerate my cakes. Now that tail was a little too long, so I'm just taking my scissors and trimming it. And do you see how I'm trying to give it motion, waving back and forth? So now I want to make the top part of the bow. I make bows weird, so just bear with me. So I'm rolling a rectangle really thin and long, and then I'm just cutting it on the very top. And then I want two pieces, so I'm cutting it directly in the middle. And then I'm going to align one on top of the other. And then I want to cut it to the correct shape. So I'm cutting down on one side and I'll cut down on the other side. The fondant's going to stick together, so I need to peel it back and then realign it. I like to do it this way so both pieces are the same shape. So I started down on one side, curve up in the middle, and end down on the other side. And then you want to lift it up and then put it back down because the fondant sticks together. And then I'm doing the same thing for the bottom, starting on one side, curving down a little bit, and then curving up. And then I want to fold it in half, take it over to my cake just to make sure that the loop is the right size. So I'm just holding it up here and I feel like that looks like it's pretty good, but the center part is a little too wide. So I'm starting a little lower when I cut this and I'm not cutting down the height of the loop. I'm just making the center part, like where it's going to meet in the center, a little more narrow. So now I want to get a little bit of water right at the end and fold it in half, squeeze it and fold it up and then down, and do the same thing for the other one. Fold it in half, fold it up and then down. And then I need to make the knot. So I have a rectangle piece of fondant. Again, I'm folding in the edges so it looks finished and I'm pinching it in the middle just to give it a little motion. And I'm cutting the edges off of those loops so they're going to meet together. Get a little bit of water behind it, put half on one side, half on the other. That was a little too long, so let me trim it. And then I'm going to get some water down, lift it up and wrap it around, flip the bow over and then tuck that down. And that's how I make my little bows. Now I'm getting paper towels in either of the loops so they hold their shape. So I just fold it in half again, roll from one end to the other and stick it down in there. And let's take this over to the cake. I like to put my bows on my cakes immediately because they're still pliable and I can contour them to the correct shape. If you wait for them to dry, then you're really not going to be able to get them in the right position. So you need to work with it a little here. I'm pressing down the center part and getting a little bit of icing behind the middle knot and pressing that back. You don't want too much icing because then it's going to seep through. Now I'm taking the handle of my paintbrush and do you see how I'm spreading the loop open at the bottom so it can cover more space? You see how it's tucked in the front a little bit? So I want to pull that out. So I'm using the handle of my paintbrush and just trying to open that loop as wide as I can. So that way I'm just trying to get it in the right position so it looks better. So I remove that paper towel so I can get my paintbrush in there and really work with it. Now I'm getting icing behind the loops and pressing that down. Any icing that's going to seep out, I'm going to remove with a dry paintbrush. But do you see how I'm still using that paintbrush to try to open the loop, give it a little motion, get it in the right position? So I take a couple minutes to really work with this fondant piece here and get it in the right position. And again, that's why I need the fondant to be soft when I'm doing this so it ends up contouring to the correct shape. Now the fondant is still a little soft and I don't want those loops to sink, so I'm putting those paper towels back in there for a little bit and I'm taking my tools and just pressing that fondant down in the center and pressing the knot down. I don't want you to be able to see any of the cake in between the bow. So now I have to work with the tail, so I have a little bit of icing. I like to use icing because it's going to solidify when I put it back in the fridge. You can use water or piping gel if you want to. And do you see how I'm waving the tails back and forth, just trying to give them a little bit of motion so they're not just flat against the cake. I feel like it looks a little bit more interesting if you do that. Now, I want to spray this with pearl. You can use edible luster spray. I have an airbrush gun, so I'm just going to spray it with the pearl, and it really brings out the color of this bow and makes it pop. So I think it looks so pretty, and I just sprayed a little bit more all over the cake. And that's how you make a big, beautiful bow for your cakes. Don't be afraid to play around with colors and sizes to really make it your own. And if you try this, tag me so I can see your creations.